The store manager raised her hand and slapped Keanu Reeves across the face.
"You don't belong here,"
she sneered.
"This isn't a charity thrift shop. Security, get him out."
The store frozen. But Keanu didn't flinch. He calmly wiped his cheek and smiled. Not a hurt smile, not a shocked smile, but a knowing, quiet smile, like he already knew exactly how this would end. And no one in that store was ready for what came next. And please comment. Respect first if you believe no one deserves to be treated like this. The chime above the glass door rang softly, almost drowned beneath the murmur of curated music and the hiss of a steamed espresso in the lounge corner. Inside Nova Atelier, everything gleamed. Chrome racks, backlit marble floors, velvet sofas that no one ever sat on. This wasn't just a store. It was a sanctuary for those who could afford to forget what things cost. And into that world stepped a man who didn't belong. At least not in their eyes. He wore an old charcoal hoodie, sleeves slightly frayed at the cuffs. His boots were scuffed, jeans creased from use, not design. A knit beanie covered most of his hair, strands of it curling out at the edges. In one hand, he held a plain brown paper bag. No designer label, no luxury tag, just a smudge of something that looked like ink on the corner. He looked like he'd just stepped off a bus. From behind the cash wrap, Celeste Monroe straightened, her lips pursed, perfectly lined in plum matte. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered. To her right, Veronica Lang, longtime customer, donor-level member, and unofficial gatekeeper of the right kind of clientele, raised a single penciled brow. "Is he lost?" she whispered. Celeste smiled tightly. If not, he's about to be. From the moment she became manager of Nova's Beverly Hills flagship, Celeste had sworn to protect the brand image. That meant controlling perception, clean lines, quiet wealth, and above all, exclusivity. She glanced across the room at Paige Rivera, who looked up from folding scarves and quickly looked away. Paige had a son, bills, and a survival instinct that kept her mouth shut. The man walked slowly, respectfully, as if absorbing the place more than browsing. He paused at a display case showcasing a $9,000 suede trench coat, his fingertips barely grazing the glass. Celeste was already moving. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice soaked in the sweetness that preceded poison. "Can I help you with something?" The man turned. His eyes were kind, tired perhaps, but calm. "Just looking, thank you." Celeste's smile stiffened. "Of course, it's just... some of our pieces are quite delicate. We usually reserve access to VIP clients." He gave a slight nod, as if that made perfect sense. Then he turned back to the display. Behind her, Chloe Tan, the youngest cashier, lifted her phone and began recording discreetly. She thought Celeste was brilliant, powerful, decisive. This would be another teaching moment. Celeste stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough for him to hear. "There's a vintage shop 2 blocks down, more your style. They have great finds, on a budget." The man didn't flinch. He looked at her, really looked, and gave the faintest smile. That unsettled her. There was no anger in him, no shame, just a stillness. Like he was watching a show he'd seen before. And in a way, he was. Because Keanu Reeves had walked into places like this all his life. And he knew exactly what happened next. Celeste Monroe didn't waste time. She pivoted on her nude stilettos and motioned for Chloe to step closer. "Start folding those scarves where he can see you," she whispered. "Eyes on him. Chloe, always eager to please, obeyed instantly. She was fresh out of fashion school, hired just 2 months ago, and already saw Celeste as some kind of retail sorceress. Every dramatic takedown was, in Chloe's eyes, protecting the aesthetic. Across the store, Keanu Reeves remained quiet. He was browsing a rack of Japanese linen jackets, his fingers gently sliding between the hangers. Each movement was slow, respectful, as if the clothes meant something to him beyond their price. Celeste couldn't stand it. She marched toward him again, this time with the fake customer service smile turned up to 10. "Sir," she said, louder this time, "these pieces are handmade. Most of them aren't even tagged on the floor yet. We prefer serious buyers only. You understand." He turned toward her, his face neutral. "Are you saying I'm not a serious buyer?" "I'm saying you look a little out of place," she replied, still smiling. "And we've had issues before with... well," she leaned in slightly. "Let's just say window shoppers who forget they're not actually in the window." Keanu didn't reply. He glanced around at the room, at the pristine marble, the curated displays, the silent judgment hanging in the air like incense. Then back at her. "I assure you," he said softly, "I'm right where I need to be." Celeste blinked. The confidence in his voice was so casual, it felt like defiance. Veronica Lang had drifted closer now, holding a champagne-colored handbag and pretending to browse. She leaned toward Celeste and said just loud enough for him to hear. He probably wandered in thinking this was a free art gallery. Celeste laughed. "Or mistook us for an upscale Goodwill." From behind the counter, Paige Rivera cringed. She didn't like where this was going. She'd seen this before, the way Celeste sharpened words like weapons. But she had a 7-year-old at home, and rent due Friday. Keanu stepped away from the rack and moved toward the jewelry display. He paused at a vintage silver cuff bracelet, its design carved with hand-etched constellations. Celeste followed like a shadow. "Oh, sweetheart," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. "That bracelet costs more than most people's rent for 6 months. Are you sure you're not looking for the clearance bin at Target?" Laughter rippled through the store. Keanu didn't even look at her. He simply took a breath, looked down at the bracelet again, then up at the reflection of the crowd gathering behind him, visible in the glass case. And then, calmly, he smiled. Not a grin, not defiance, just the look of someone who already knows how the story ends. Celeste felt it again, that chill in her chest, that creeping sensation that she wasn't humiliating him. She was auditioning for something, and she was failing. Keanu stood at the jewelry case, still admiring the bracelet, a delicate band of silver etched with constellations. It reminded him of something his sister once wore. He didn't flinch when Celeste appeared beside him again, her heels clicking sharply on the marble like warning bells. She was smiling wider now, but her eyes were daggers. "Well," she said, "looks like someone has expensive taste." Keanu gave her a polite nod. "It's beautiful craftsmanship." Celeste's laugh was too loud, too forced. "Right. I'm sure someone like you really appreciates craftsmanship." She gestured to his hoodie with a flick of the wrist. "Is that from the Homeless Winter 2020 collection?" Snickers echoed behind him. Veronica Lang had positioned herself behind a rack of handbags, clearly enjoying the show. Chloe Tan was recording discreetly from behind a display, eyes gleaming. The humiliation was no longer subtle. It was a performance. Keanu's expression didn't change. He turned away from the case and walked calmly to the dress section. There, displayed on a mannequin beneath a soft spotlight, hung a long, obsidian black trench coat, one of Nova Atelier's signature pieces. $9,000. tailored by hand. Limited edition. "I'd like to try this on," he said evenly. The store fell silent. Celeste's lips curled. This was the moment she'd been waiting for. "Oh, sweetie," she purred, loud enough for everyone to hear. "That coat requires a credit pre-authorization before trying it on. It's our policy for high-value items. Surely you understand." Paige Rivera looked up from the register, startled. That was a lie. There was no such policy, but Paige said nothing. Keanu didn't argue. "That's fine," he said. "But I do have a question." Celeste crossed her arms. "Yes? What does dignity cost in this store?" That landed like a slap, but the real one came next. Celeste's face darkened. Her pride, her posture, her curated image, all of it boiled into fury. "You think you're clever?" she snapped, and then, smack. Her hand struck his cheek. Clean. Sharp. The sound cracked across the marble like a gunshot. Gasps filled the room. Chloe stopped recording, stunned. Veronica blinked, but didn't object. A few customers chuckled awkwardly, not sure whether to applaud or retreat. Keanu didn't react. He simply stood still, then slowly turned back to her. He reached up, wiped his cheek gently with the back of his hand, and looked Celeste dead in the eye. Then, he smiled. A calm, steady, knowing smile. "You just made this very, very simple," he said softly. Celeste's smirk wavered. For the first time, she felt it. The unsettling awareness that she may have crossed a line she didn't know existed. Keanu turned and walked toward the door. He didn't storm out. He drifted like fog. Quiet, unbothered, and watching. As he exited into the sunlight, he pulled out his phone. And Celeste? She thought she had humiliated nobody, but she had just slapped the man who owned the building she worked in. Outside, the sunlight was sharp, almost too bright after the frost of what had just happened. Keanu Reeves stood still on the sidewalk, one hand in his coat pocket, the other holding his phone loosely. Behind him, the glass facade of Nova Atelier gleamed like a mirror, reflecting a place that had just celebrated his humiliation. Through the window, he could still see Celeste Monroe, standing tall, surrounded by laughter, basking in her perceived victory. Veronica Lang was clinking her jewelry-laden fingers against a champagne flute someone had brought from the back. Chloe Tan whispered to a customer, giggling, phone still in hand. And Paige stood behind the counter, frozen in silent shame. Keanu watched them for a moment, then lifted the phone to his ear. The call connected after one ring. "Trent," a calm voice answered on the other end. "Yes, sir?" "It's time," Keanu said simply. "Activate Protocol 47. Full deployment. Legal, PR, operations, security. Immediate." There was a beat of silence. Trent's voice dropped into something low and serious. "Understood. Which location?" "Beverly Hills flagship. Nova Atelier." Keanu's eyes remained fixed on Celeste through the glass. She was laughing again, now recounting the moment she slapped him like it was a dinner party anecdote. "And Trent?" "Yes?" "Bring everything. Ownership records, internal footage. I want board presence." "Confirmed. ETA 25 minutes. Keanu ended the call and slipped the phone back into his coat. Then he exhaled. Long. Controlled. It wasn't anger burning in his chest. It was clarity. He had once thought that staying anonymous, letting his investments speak for themselves, was the kindest way to empower others. Let the young designers shine. Let the brand breathe. No ego, no attention. That was his philosophy. But moments like this, cruelty wrapped in couture, reminded him that sometimes silence wasn't noble. It was dangerous. And sometimes the only way to teach someone the value of dignity was to take back everything they thought they controlled. He didn't walk away. He stayed. He leaned casually against the pillar beside the entrance, arms crossed, watching them celebrate, letting the minutes tick by. Inside, Celeste popped a second bottle of champagne, declaring the official removal of aesthetic pollution. Chloe clapped. Veronica raised her glass in mock solemnity. Paige stared down at her shoes. The sidewalk around Keanu remained quiet. A breeze rustled through the palms. A mother pushed a stroller. A dog barked in the distance, but behind those mirrored windows, the store buzzed like a hive full of arrogance. They had no idea. In 25 minutes, 3 black SUVs would pull up to the curb. And everything they knew, their jobs, their reputations, their smug certainty, would be erased in less time than it took to raise a hand and slap a stranger. At exactly 3:47 p.m., the first black SUV rolled up to the curb in front of Nova Atelier. It was silent, sleek, and unmarked, but unmistakably serious. 2 more followed close behind, parking in perfect unison like a synchronized warning. Inside the store, Celeste Monroe was mid-toast. "To preserving standards," she announced, lifting a crystal flute high into the air. Laughter erupted from the small crowd gathered near the front display. Veronica Lang clapped approvingly, clearly enjoying her role as queen of the floor. Chloe Tan had already uploaded a clip of The Slap to her private story with the caption, "This is how you keep the brand clean." No one noticed the SUVs. Not yet. Paige Rivera did. From behind the register, she caught the reflection of dark-tinted windows in the storefront glass. Her heart skipped. These weren't customers. These weren't influencers. This was something else. The front doors opened. In stepped a woman in a sharp navy pantsuit, mid-50s, no makeup, eyes like steel. Rachel Shin, head of legal affairs for Nova Atelier Global. Flanking her were Andre Boone, chief of HR, and David Kim, director of security operations. Behind them, a small entourage of assistants, compliance officers, and 2 men in suits carrying slim black briefcases. The laughter died instantly. Celeste blinked, her champagne glass frozen halfway to her lips. For a brief moment, her brain tried to stitch a narrative that made sense. Corporate visit? Surprise inspection? VIP guests? She stepped forward, smile reheated and professional. "Welcome to Nova Beverly Hills. I wasn't informed we'd be having visitors today, but I'm thrilled you're here. I just finished handling a particularly unpleasant situation." Rachel didn't shake her hand. She simply said, "Miss Monroe, we'll be conducting an internal inquiry. Please gather your staff." Celeste's smile flickered. "Is there something wrong?" David Kim spoke this time, calm and direct. "We've received a report of severe misconduct, video evidence included." The words hit like ice water. Chloe's face went pale. Veronica's eyebrows furrowed, confused and indignant. "I assure you," Celeste began, "whatever footage you've seen has been grossly taken out of context. I was protecting the brand experience." Rachel cut her off. "You humiliated a customer, in front of witnesses, on camera. Do you know who that man was?" Celeste paused. Everyone in the store turned toward the window, because now Keanu Reeves was walking in. But it wasn't the man in the hoodie and old boots anymore. He wore a black wool coat, shoulders squared, posture composed. Clean lines, subtle power. His eyes scanned the room like a director on a soundstage. And everyone, every smirking customer, every whispering employee, suddenly realized they hadn't kicked out anybody. They had publicly assaulted, mocked, and filmed Keanu Reeves, the owner, the investor, the reason this brand even existed. And now, he was here to clean the house. Silence fell over Nova Atelier like a curtain. No more laughter, no more clinking glasses, no more champagne toasts. Keanu Reeves stood just inside the entrance now, still composed, yet impossibly commanding. He didn't need to say a word. The air bent around him. Power radiated not from posture or voice, but from presence. The same man Celeste had called lost, cheap, and a problem now stood framed by marble walls and floor-length mirrors. But this time, everyone was looking up at him. "Miss Monroe," said Rachel Shin evenly, "allow me to formally introduce you to Mr. Keanu Reeves, founder, executive stakeholder, and principal investor of Nova Atelier." The floor might as well have split beneath Celeste's feet. Her voice faltered. That's not possible. He came in here like..." She looked around helplessly, reaching for anything that could make this moment untrue. Like a drifter. He looked like someone off the street. Keanu's head tilted slightly. "And what exactly should someone off the street look like, Ms. Monroe?" The question wasn't shouted. It was soft, like an observation whispered to a storm. But it struck harder than any yell. Celeste's lips parted, but no sound came. She looked toward Veronica Lang for backup, but the older woman was already backing away, one trembling hand on her pearl necklace. I didn't know," Veronica muttered. "If I had known who you were..." Keanu turned his gaze on her. "You would have treated me differently." She stopped, said nothing. Behind them, Chloe's phone slipped from her hand. She'd deleted her video already, but it didn't matter. The real one, the high-definition footage, the audio, the humiliation, had been captured by him. From behind the corporate team, David Kim nodded to one of the briefcase-carrying men. They stepped forward and began handing out documents, internal review notices, termination papers, suspension memos. Rachel read from her tablet. "Effective immediately. Celeste Monroe, terminated for cause. Chloe Tan, removed from mentorship program and suspended pending review. Veronica Lang, permanently banned from all Nova Atelier locations and events. Evan Price, demoted and assigned to mandatory ethics retraining. Paige Rivera," Paige's eyes widened, "offered immediate transfer to management development in our San Diego location with full relocation support." Paige's hands trembled. I don't deserve..." Keanu looked at her gently. "You stayed silent, but you didn't laugh. That still means something." Celeste's face crumpled. "I thought I was protecting the brand." "You were destroying its soul," Rachel replied coldly. But Keanu wasn't finished. He stepped to the center of the store and turned to face the room. Every employee, every customer, every polished surface that had reflected judgment instead of humanity. "You don't know someone's worth by their shoes," he said, "or their coat, or their wallet." He let the silence settle. "You know it by how they treat people who can't do anything for them." And just like that, the mask that Nova Atelier wore, elegant, exclusive, elite, cracked wide open. The store had changed. Where moments ago there had been laughter, now there was stillness. The chandeliers above Nova Atelier's polished marble floor no longer sparkled. They loomed. Every mirror reflected shame. Every designer handbag seemed trivial. Trapped between luxury and guilt, the room held its breath. Keanu Reeves stood at the center. No longer the stranger in a hoodie they had mocked. No longer silent. Just a man, calm, steady, unshaken, who had endured their worst without raising his voice. And now he spoke, not to punish, but to remind. For 8 hours today, he began. You all participated in something bigger than a bad assumption. Bigger than a mistake. Eyes dropped. Chloe wept silently. Veronica Lang stood like stone, lips pressed thin with horror. Paige clutched the transfer document in trembling hands. You decided who belonged, Keanu continued, based on nothing more than a hoodie and a paper bag. You laughed, filmed, performed. But you didn't ask yourself the only question that matters in places like this. He paused, letting the silence land like a gavel. Are we building something that includes or excludes? No one spoke. Rachel Shin watched the room carefully. Her team stood behind her, already logging each reaction, every nervous glance, every muttered apology. Keanu walked slowly toward the front counter. He picked up a discarded champagne flute, the one used to toast his removal, and set it gently down. I didn't come here to catch anyone, he said. I came to observe, to see if the people we trust with our brand also understood the values behind it. He turned to face them once more. If image is all that matters, this store will thrive for a year, maybe 2. But if dignity matters, if kindness matters, then Nova will outlive all of us. Because we made it mean something. Then, quietly, and that starts today. Rachel stepped forward. Effective immediately, Nova Atelier will launch a full internal retraining program across all branches: cultural ethics, anti-discrimination, emotional intelligence. She looked at the employees. Participation isn't optional. Culture will be enforced, not assumed. Keanu nodded. I won't fire everyone. Mistakes teach. But those who led the cruelty, those who laughed the loudest, they've made their choice. Celeste Monroe was already gone, escorted out minutes earlier, her name tag left behind like a warning. Keanu turned to Paige. You're better than this place has shown you. Take the opportunity. Become the voice here that I wasn't. Tears filled her eyes. I will. He moved to the door, glancing over his shoulder one last time. To anyone watching, he said, remember this. Respect isn't about income. Dignity doesn't wear logos. And kindness never goes out of style. He pushed open the door. The sunlight was waiting, and behind him, Nova Atelier began its slow rebirth. One human decision at a time. If this story made you feel something, anger, hope, or even a wake-up call, don't let it stop here. Share it with someone who still believes kindness is weakness. Comment, human first. If you believe respect should never depend on appearance, and remember, the way we treat strangers says everything about who we are. Be the kind of person who doesn't need a name tag to show someone compassion. Like, comment, share. Let's rebuild a world where everyone belongs, starting with how we see each other.